Welcome to Auticles, a weekly audible blog that reviews 3 selected articles from the best online magazines and websites. I am Safi. Technologist Peter Thiel once said, "We wanted flying cars. We got 140 characters." This is pretty much the theme of the article written by science journalist Michael Hanlon in Aeon magazine. Actually, the quote is taken from the article itself. Under the title "The Golden Quarter," Hanlon investigates the reasons why human progress has ground to a halt. The way he sees it is that the period between 1945 and 1971, which he dubs the Golden Quarter, was an age of innovation and genuineness, and most of what has happened since is just refinement and sophistication, improvement upon those innovations. So why there was progress then and not now? Was it growth? Was it equality in wealth? Was it successful capital? Hanlon considers all of this and boils it down to one distinctive factor that drives progress, and that is risk-taking attitude. And of course he doesn't leave it at that. He provides various comparisons in terms of risk-taking and risk-aversion attitudes between the Golden Quarter and now. A few examples are, with regard to society, during the Golden Quarter, feminists and early civil rights and anti-war protesters risked their lives and media allowed dissent. Today, there is policed language, enforced timidity, and encouraged group thinking, as the article describes it. Medically, during the Golden Quarter, risks were taken in the global vaccination campaign against smallpox and in rushing new medicines to the market. Today, there is long delay in the approval and commercialization of new medicines. And economically, during the Golden Quarter, venture capital was willing to take risks in the emerging electronic technologies. Today, it funds incremental improvements on previously released products. Hanlon summarizes the whole situation by pointing out, quote, "Scientists and technologists were generally celebrated 50 years ago, when people remembered what the world was like before penicillin, vaccination, modern dentistry, affordable cars, and TV. Now we are distrustful and suspicious. We have forgotten just how dreadful the world was pre-Golden Quarter. But why does it matter to take risks or challenge what we call progress today? The world is better, safer, richer." Michael Hanlon, as he finalizes his essay in Aeon magazine, says, "It matters because things could have been so much better if the pace of change had continued. Alzheimer's, cancer, climate change, hunger, and many other issues would be behind us now. Who got colonies on the moon?" he says. "If the Golden Quarter had become the Golden Century, the battery in your magic smartphone might even last more than a day." Political extremists, and have you wondered if their opinions are biased by their political affiliation? Well, a research team led by psychological scientist Mark J. Brandt of Tilburg University in the Netherlands wondered the same and set out to investigate whether ideology affects cognition. The research results suggest that extremity does not necessarily beget irrationality. Here's how they found out. They conducted 3 studies using cumulative anchoring tasks to test 2 competing hypotheses. 1. Political extremists are unthinking consumers and practitioners of politics. 2. Political extremists are confident consumers and practitioners of politics. Okay, first let's see what anchoring is. Wikipedia provides a pretty good definition for it. It says, anchoring is a cognitive bias that describes the common human tendency to rely too heavily on the first piece of information offered, the anchor, when making decisions. During decision making, anchoring occurs when the individual uses an initial piece of information to make subsequent judgments. Once an anchor is set, other judgments are made by adjusting away from the anchor, and there is a bias toward interpreting other information around the anchor. For example, the initial price offered for a used car sets the standard for the rest of the negotiations, so that prices lower than the initial price seem more reasonable, even if they are still higher than what the car is really worth. Okay, now that we know what anchoring is, let's continue with the research. I was saying that there were 3 studies, right? Well, the first and third studies used anchors generated by the experimenters, and the 2 studies were mediated by the second study, which used anchors generated by the participants on belief superiority. The team found that extremists were more likely than moderates to resist experimenter-generated anchors and indifferentially likely to accept self-generated anchors. This suggests that extremists' belief in the superiority of their own opinions makes them differentiate between externally and internally generated anchors, and therefore be less influenced by other opinions than moderates are. Because the experiments used non-political anchors, these findings suggest that judgments made by extremists are likely to be results of confidence and not automatic influence by heuristics. This information is extracted from the research abstract, which was published in Psychological Science, a journal of the Association for Psychological Science. Access to the full research is restricted, however, you can read a more detailed report on it at scipost.org. That the ancient Greeks acknowledged libraries as healing places for the soul, or that the word and practice of bibliotherapy actually do exist? Journalist and critic Visva Anderson tells us that and more as she launches her column on BBC Culture. The column is named Textual Healing. What a wordplay, huh? Well, she takes us on a journey exploring the therapeutic aspects of reading, the history of bibliotherapy and its practice, before offering to prescribe us books that speak to our predicaments if we tell her about them. In this introductory article, we learn that studies have shown that reading in general enhances our ability to recognize patterns. Reading fiction in particular changes our behavior, making us more socially able, empathetic, and motivated, for example. Reading short stories triggers self-reflection, and reading poetry engages memory brain parts. Visva also reminds us that reading may help by simply disconnecting us from reality for a short while before we come back charged and armed with our reading experience. Well, now that it's clear that reading cures, what is bibliotherapy and how is it applied? Visva explains that the word bibliotherapy first appeared in print in the 1920s novel. 20 years later, the word made it to a medical dictionary defined as bibliotherapy, the employment of books and the reading of them in the treatment of nervous diseases. Bibliotherapy is practiced around the world by psychologists, social workers, and counselors along with librarians, says Visva. So, if you have a problem in your life that you need help with, Visva Anderson promises to prescribe the books that offer the best advice for your situation. Well, Well, this is the end of this week's episode of Auticles. Tune in to my YouTube channel for a new episode next week. With love, Safi.